you're in control and you can change things if you want to. And they almost held a mirror up to me so I could go, okay, this isn't you. You need to sort your shit out. The best personal development is just working on yourself, mentally and physically.
That journey is full of lots of risks that you've taken. It's also full of lots of self-development and actually looking deep into perhaps what you thought were your weaknesses and turning them into superpowers. And that is 110% the mindset that a high achiever needs to have. Archie, welcome to the Mindset Bill podcast.
Thank you.
So, we were chatting earlier about how you went from quantity surveyor to now being an expert in coaching entrepreneurs to level up in life. How did that transition happen? Where did it start from?
Yeah, so I think where it started from, I've got to take you all the way back to childhood. And the reason I say that is because in childhood, I felt like I was being pigeonholed through the school system. There'll be a lot of people listening to this that will feel the same way, that you're in a classroom, you got distracted because it really didn't suit you. You were probably disrupting the class and all that kind of stuff. That was me. And I went through school being told that was just because that's who I was. I was naughty and blah, blah, blah. Actually, now I know that was because that system didn't fit me. So I went through school not really understanding that, and then got forced into going to college, doing my A-levels, and then going into a 9-to-5 job in quantity surveying and getting a quantity surveying degree. So I sit here now as a bachelor's in quantity surveying, which is very strange. And all through that time, I still had that exact same feeling of, I don't quite fit in, and I'm being pigeonholed into something here that I'm not. And then it came round to COVID, which was a massive blessing in disguise for myself. I was furloughed for a long period of time, played Call of Duty for most of that time. And then all of a sudden we had to go back into the office. And when my boss was telling us we were going back in, I was like, I just can't think of anything worse. Right. It really gave me an opportunity to have a think about what I wanted from my life. And at that point, I just handed in my notice and said, I'm not coming back. I'm done. But importantly, part of the story that I missed, prior to that, I lost 60 pounds in body weight. I went from being fat, overweight, unhappy in my own skin, overly stressed, just generally a bit of a mess, shall we say, to being pretty damn fit, seeing my abs for the first time, having really good energy. And I did that whilst working a 9-to-5 job in quantity surveying, which was actually more like 12 hours a day. So that's where the passion from fitness came. And yeah, I haven't looked back since that point of handing my notice in, fortunately.
I love to hear it, because that journey is full of lots of risks that you've taken. It's also full of lots of self-development and actually looking deep into perhaps what you thought were your weaknesses and turning them into superpowers. And that is 110% the mindset that a high achiever needs to have. So when it comes down to, let's talk about the start of your fitness journey, where, as you say, you were working 9 to 5 in a very busy, demanding job, possibly one that you kind of found yourself forced into as something that you were kind of feeling like, oh, I'll be successful if I do X, Y, Z, but it didn't truly align with your passion. Where did you start with no prior, personal training knowledge, no fitness knowledge? Because it's interesting, a lot of these conversations that I'll have with other fitness professionals, they'll have been into fitness their whole lives, or they'll have, done a PT qualification really early on. We're both very different. We both started quite late, shall we say, and we probably self-taught ourselves a lot of things. So how did you go from that position where you were in a job where you were working consistently, and probably also the environment of that job didn't really facilitate fitness very well? How did you lose that amount of body weight by yourself?
Yeah, so it wasn't by myself, first and foremost. And again, through school and college, I was actually always like the fit kid, head of the sports teams, all of that stuff. So when I actually put on that weight, when I went through to a 9-to-5, it was just like so out of alignment with myself. And the first thing that I did was, I went through all the process of trying all the shit, not really having any knowledge at all, trying keto. I've been there and done that. I've tried all the fucking fitness classes and stuff. Didn't work, right? So, and then I decided to put some money into it, actually just hire a coach and get some expert advice. And they really helped me just kickstart that journey. So I'm very thankful to that person or a couple of coaches in my life that I've hired over that time, because without them, I wouldn't be where I was now, because that's kind of where I initially saw that I could do that for other people as well. I hired a coach. They gave me ultimately, here's the outline of what you need to do, and gave me the guidance to do it. And I just someone to implement. So I did it, took the action, and still haven't looked back.
And so you found yourself technically echoing that. So for those listening, perhaps a bit of context with regard to what your coaching business is now, who you specialize in working with, because you kind of mirror that now in what you do today from the support that you had back then, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, we want to work with entrepreneurs, business owners, high performers that do just want to implement that are currently overly stressed, overweight, know that that's not in alignment with themselves. So I very much coach the previous version of myself. That is what we do.
Yeah. And with those type of people, the previous version of yourself or your current client base that you work with, what do you think is the most pronounced roadblock that those people have? Because a lot of people who are listening will be self-employed, there'll be business owners, or there'll be people in very demanding jobs. So what's the biggest roadblock that those people have compared to other people, perhaps?
Probably just say overwhelming stress. Our clients, when they initially come to us, they have way too much on their plates, and they're trying to spin way too many plates at the same time. And something's got to give. And typically that thing is yourself, because you put yourself at the back of the pile. You're trying to provide for your family, trying to look after your business, whatever it might be. And then all of a sudden you find yourself at the back of the pile and you don't see it. But slowly, week by week, month by month, you slip backwards. And then a lot of these guys and girls, they get to a point where they can't slip backwards any further, and they know they need to do something. So a lot of that initial process is getting beyond that roadblock of actually bringing the stress down for them so they can focus on themselves first, which I think is a really, really important point, that in order to do that, you actually just have to start focusing on yourself and get over that roadblock first. I know that sounds funny, but you have to have that commitment to focus on yourself, so then that stress can actually be alleviated a little bit.
What was your tipping point then? What was your tipping point when you decided to change, but then when you also got to saturation point and you were like, I need some help to do this because it's not working alone? I'm interested to hear that.
Yeah, so I think by myself, I'd made some decent progress, maybe 2 or 3 times, and yo-yoed back up. And that was where I was like, right, I'm putting all this time, effort, energy, money into certain things, and it's just not really working. I can't really crack the code. And I got to a point where I'd put the weight on again, and someone had mentioned something in work, and I worked in the construction industry. It's not very forgiving. The guys in there, if their words aren't very forgiving. I remember walking in front of someone in the stairs, and they said, "Come on, you fat bastard." And I was like, whoa, that is the first ever time I've ever been called a fat bastard. He was joking and meant it well, but it really sort of hurt me, and I still remember it to this day. And that was the tipping point. I was like, yeah, I'm not being called that again. Let's go sort it out, and just got some expert advice. And yeah.
So when it comes to those moments where perhaps people are insensitive, you use that as fuel as opposed to using it as fuel to kind of facilitate that victim mentality. Had that been something that you've dealt with previously, where you felt like a victim, you were just kind of stuck in that way, like this is the way that I'll be forever? Because you said that you went from being quite athletic to then obviously putting on the body weight. Is it something that you'd tried to change, or had you just kind of been stuck in that phase until someone said, hey, they'd kind of given you that insult, which obviously isn't kind, but was it fueling you to change even faster than you would have done otherwise?
Yeah, comments like that, or moments like that, definitely was just fuel to the fire for myself. And just use that. And I don't think I've ever had a victim mentality, no matter whatever I've ever done. I worked that job for however many years, didn't moan once, didn't complain once. I'm a true believer and always have been. I don't know if it's a mindset that's been instilled from parents or whether I was, born and wired that way, that you're in control and you can change things if you want to. And I think for a period of time, I probably lost that thought process. But I don't think I ever became a victim of it. I think I just was on autopilot and just doing the day-to-day life rather than actually thinking, you know what, take a step back, you're in control of this and going ahead. And I think moments like that just gave me, almost held up a mirror to me, right? It's like, and I'm very thankful for that comment now, but they almost held a mirror up to me so I could go, okay, this isn't you. You need to sort your shit out.
That's fascinating, because you're saying that you always like had that stoic approach of being able to control what you could control. You didn't feel sorry for yourself. But when you were younger, you say that you weren't really well understood. So if you weren't well understood and you felt like the school system wasn't made for you, what was your mindset and outlook? If you didn't feel like a victim, how did you deal with that? Because I'll be honest, I definitely felt like a victim in school. I felt like people didn't really cater to understanding what it was like to be someone who's a bit more quiet and insecure. Teachers would kind of pick on you, or it felt like they were picking on you. And for me, it just put me more and more into my shell as a very unconfident, overweight kid, right? But for yourself, did you perceive it differently? Or how did you perceive those, I think the structures that are put in the education system that don't necessarily facilitate those with different types of personalities, or those who are a bit more neurodiverse, shall we say?
Yeah, I probably did the opposite of you. So I think you've lent into what you probably were back then, right? In terms of like insecure, anxious and whatnot. I was like the complete opposite. So I just lent into being, right, if I'm going to be the naughty kid, let's be the naughty kid. Let's have some fun with it and enjoy it a little bit. So I was just like really cheeky, really extroverted, loud, and would just do whatever I could to get in trouble, really. So I was never like a really, really bad kid, but I was just cheeky.
I can see that. I can see that in how you behave nowadays, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm still that kid.
But it served you well, because we both know that when it comes to building a community and a business, that you attract like-minded people, right?
Sure.
I think also if you've always lent into it, you've been confident with your personality, that's freaking awesome, because that means that you have a similar tribe of people around you. Whereas I had to go through probably a big physical transformation as well as a mental one, to be like, no, it's okay to be who you are, as opposed to feeling shy and reserved. So off the back of that, would you say that it reflects in terms of the type of people that work with you? Go-getters, people who are always striving for more, that extra 1%, and also, feeling like they can control things? Or do you have to mold your approach a little bit to those who maybe feel like life has given them, a rough hand, and you're going to have to help to inspire them and motivate them a little bit more to take on your mentality?
I very much struggle to work with, or we very much struggle to work with victims. I struggle with it. It's not in my DNA to think that way. So of course everyone's going to have different needs, but if you're someone that's literally finding a reason why all the time, why things are going wrong and why this is happening, why that's happening, we're probably not the coaching brand for you. We want to work with people that are go-getters, that know what they want, and they're not afraid to go after it. Now, of course, that doesn't mean for anyone listening to this that it's going to be an easy road and there's not going to be bumps. But it's more about the attitude of, I can do this and I will do this. It's just a matter of time, rather than finding every single reason why you can't do it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's a bold statement to make. It's a bold statement to say, this is the type of person that we work with. If you don't fit that mold, then it's probably not right for us. But also, I think that's where you've formed such a phenomenal business of helping that specialist type of people. So that now helps me to understand a little bit more of why you take such big risks and you make such big decisions in life. So one of those risks, as you said, just quitting your job because you didn't want to go back into the office. Deciding, you know what, right, I want to invest in a health and fitness business. I want to change my life. And you did that, like that, without actually worrying or umming and ahhing, because you were going to make it work, right? That's the mentality that you had.
100%. Everyone thought I was crazy, by the way. Like, my parents thought I was crazy. Got very good parents, but they kind of sat me down and was like, are you sure you know what you're doing? You're like, how old was I? 22 or 23, and you're earning like 50k a year, and you've got a very good career path ahead of you. There's directors roles, there's management roles. And I was just like, I just can't do another day in the office. I can't go back there. So yeah, I knew what I wanted and I just went after it. And that was on a bit of a whim, that decision, and probably a bit of a heated decision as well, and an emotional one. But that attitude has always served me well, right? And I'm sure there's been moments where it hasn't, and those decisions have been wrong, but it's still been true to myself, and it's been true to how I like to make decisions and stuff like that. So yeah.
Do you function well under pressure?
Yes. Yeah, I like to think I do. I feel like I function well under pressure is also something that a lot of people say when they're disorganized, which is me. I'm disorganized. I'm chaotic. My mind's a bit mental. You know, I don't have binders or anything like that, right? Everything's kind of in my head. But for that reason, I do function well under pressure. But I think that's because of my downside there. But just to give you a bit of an idea. So I mentioned I've got a degree in quantity surveying. I did my dissertation in 2 nights. So yeah, 2 nights, full dissertation.
This is the thing, right? This is why I asked, do you function well under pressure? Because there's a specific type of person that can make shit happen, even when it comes to things just seeming completely against the odds. And that's what you've shown consistently throughout, you know, the time that I've known you and even before then. And it's channeling the fact that your mindset is ultimately like, I'm going to show up and do the best that I can and everything will be okay. So you sound like an optimist at heart. Would you say that you're always kind of thinking things are going to go in a optimistic way, as opposed to perhaps being pessimistic or, you know, focusing on realism? Because if you want to make shit happen and you're putting yourself under that pressure, you've probably got a positive outlook on life.
100%. Yeah, I've got a very positive outlook on life. I think the only time that I don't is if I'm overly stressed and I haven't been looking after myself too well. Then I can get into the mindset of things are going to go wrong. But that's only because I haven't been looking after myself. So when I'm actually in alignment with my values and I'm looking after myself and, you know, I'm sleeping well, I'm training, I'm eating good foods, I'm very much an optimist. Like, I'm always looking at what can go well rather than what can go wrong. I don't really think about that side of things, which again could be a downfall. One day it's probably going to bite me in the arse, but right now it's working well. So
you've got pretty far with the optimism and working under pressure, taking big risks. I think this is unconventional for people to hear, right? A lot of people will hear be entirely logical all the time, don't be emotional, don't follow your heart, you know, use your brain. And so it's nice to hear a story from someone who's been very much so in the mindset of, I'm going to make shit happen in the way that I want to, and I'm not going to fit any type of mold, and I'm going to be optimistic that it can work. Because all of that energy you transformed into, literally off the back of what you're saying, is now you're giving those people who work with you or who follow your content the bleed effect, which is when you start positively focusing on your health, your fitness, your nutrition, it bleeds into other areas of your life. You feel more productive, you're more efficient at other things. And you're saying, like, that's the one limiting factor, the foundation of health. If you don't invest into that, that's where your optimism switches and you feel negative, and then it can probably taint other things in life, right?
100%. Yeah, if I'm not at my best physically, then my mind's not at its best. And best physically doesn't mean necessarily like the leanest ever or whatever. But if I'm not just giving myself some self-love in some way, shape or form every day, then my mind doesn't work where it needs to work. And that affects everything from work to relationships, absolutely everything, yeah.
So how do you hold yourself accountable to it? How do you hold yourself accountable to always, even in those high pressure times, looking after your health and really focusing on what's best for you so that you are, you know, functioning well consistently?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that I haven't always, and I've made mistakes. You know, I've made every mistake in the book. I'll still make mistakes tomorrow and next week and next month. And it's just every single time those mistakes are made, you learn from the mistakes. So it's realizing that pattern that I just mentioned, that if I don't look after myself, this happens. If I do look after myself, this happens. You know, life goes in a better way. So I guess that accountability comes from an accumulation of mistakes and then learning what I need to do with it. So yeah, and in terms of accountability, I have a big reason why I do what I want to do. I have a team that I've now got to provide for. You know, their livelihoods rely on the business doing well, and I want to do things for my family and stuff. So in order to stay accountable, it's not necessarily very difficult because I've got to do these things well for those people. It's bigger than me.
Yeah, it starts off from initially being your responsibility is to you for your happiness and fulfillment. And I suppose obviously you got to that stage when you had a job that you enjoyed more and you had your own business and you're like, okay, cool. Like, I formed this, my life is brighter and more colorful. And then it's transformed into, I've got people to look after. So that driver for you to be functioning at your best has almost just become bigger over time as you've developed, right?
Definitely. But I do feel as entrepreneurs, it's very easy to lose sight of that as well. And there's been points where I've lost sight of it and I've lost that drive to continue pushing on. I'm like, life's quite comfortable. You know, I can just stay here and we'll do all right. And I think, again, every entrepreneur listening to this and business owner, I'm sure you've experienced it where you just lose that fire up your ass a little bit. But and then as soon as you reconnect to why you're doing it, we've got X amount of clients that rely on us to improve their health and fitness. And if you even go further than that, their families rely on us to create a happy individual there. And their kids, for example, with a dad who's 60 pounds overweight, if he doesn't lose that weight, he might die early. So like, it's a very big why when you start peeling back the layers. And if I can give one bit of advice on this podcast to people, it's to really connect with that on a deeper level and continue asking yourself why and who else it's going to affect and who else. Because if I don't do what I do and I don't show up every day, it affects all of those people I've just mentioned amongst a lot of other people. So you can have a huge effect on the world by doing some relatively menial small things.
So with that it's almost like a prevention method before complacency, comes into play. That's something where I think I've had to do a lot of work. Let's just talk about lifestyle. As business has grown, as life has developed, my lifestyle has got better and better and better. And sometimes it can be a case of you're just enjoying things, going with the flow. You've got push and pull seasons, and sometimes you can kind of pull back a little bit more than you would like to, or than you would have done previously, where you might be in survival mode, let's say, where you're desperately trying to achieve a goal, whether that's making a business work, whether it's trying to get to a specific goal, whether it's, physique goal or a performance related goal. You're in that kind of push season. Then when you pull back, you can get stuck there a little bit. One of the things that I've started to do is just do a little bit of a recalibration to see, okay, where am I at? What season am I in? And what more could I be doing? Or am I going to give myself permission to have this as a bit more downtime? I'm interested to know, do you have anything similar to that? Or are you always kind of thinking, no, you should do more, you should do more?
Definitely not. I've made that mistake before and just burn out. And I know a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs do this, where it's like work every day, do more until a point of burnout, and then recycle and start again after a week of like being ill or feeling like shit. Not the best way of doing things, in my opinion. So I think downtime is very important, relaxing and allowing your mind to recover, allowing your body to recover. And yeah, I think actually taking a step back sometimes then allows you to take 2 steps forward. But one thing that I do is, if I'm in that moment and say, I'm relaxing on the beach somewhere or by the pool, and I'm actually just having some time off work and I begin to feel guilty, which again is a pretty damn normal thing, I'll just ask myself, am I acting in alignment with the very best version of myself right now? And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes it's no. So for example, we're going to brunch after this, right? And I'm going to have a few drinks, I'm going to have a good time. If I ask myself that question, is this the best version of myself? Yes, it is, because I want to be social today. I want to enjoy it. I want to make memories. And that's an important part of health as well. So I think just aligning yourself with that and actually being really honest with yourself. Sometimes that answer is going to be no. Sometimes you're just being lazy and you need to do more. But sometimes, you give yourself that permission, and then it strips back that guilt, and you go, okay, actually, this is why I need to do it, because if I'm social and I go to brunch and I enjoy myself, that's going to give me more fire to go the next week and stuff. So yeah, that's the way I like to view things.
Yeah, you're giving away our secrets there of work hard in the morning, play hard in the afternoon.
Yeah.
You guys are so lucky that we're recording this podcast at this time of day. But I really, really love the fact that you said you've got to give yourself permission to have downtime, because that's where the guilt stems from. It's not giving yourself permission. So whether it's one day off per week as a busy entrepreneur, business owner, someone who's self-employed, or even as a parent who's never really switching off because they've got other people relying on them, you have got to give yourself that permission for, this is my time. Like in my diary, I literally have on a Wednesday morning, Millie time is blocked out. And it's because that's how I've given myself permission to not have any responsibility in that time. And when you do that, the feelings of productivity, I think, are a lot healthier, as opposed to when you're self-employed, a business owner, you're always thinking, oh, I could be doing more. Or even if you're studying for something or wanting to start a side hustle or anything along those lines, if you're someone who's always aiming to be 1% better, you can always think that you should be doing more. But it's the ultimate way to lead to an unfulfilled life, to lose passion. And it sounds like you've got that nailed as for something that you really incorporate well.
Getting there. Yeah, I wouldn't call it nailed, but I'm getting there. I'm getting better. Definitely. I definitely used to be the guy that just thought you had to work all the time. The funny thing is, and it's like ironic, and we see this so much with the guys and girls that we work with, is if you work constantly, you actually get a lot less done. If you can find a way to be way more productive in the time that you work via looking after yourself, your health, your fitness, downtime, you get way more done in a short period of time, and you can literally get double the amount of work in that time. So a lot of entrepreneurs, like they work like a cow eats, right? And the cow just eats all day. It eats all day, but it doesn't eat very much. And you need to figure out a way where you can work like a lion, where you just go out on a hunt, you get a load of shit done, and then that's it. And then you can take your time off and you can enjoy it. So that's the way I like to view things. Like, don't do it as grazing, work in strong, impactful periods of time, and then it's done. You can then enjoy it.
I love that. That's going to be the podcast trailer.
Yeah.
Like, that is the best analogy I think I've ever heard. That is fascinating. And, you know, I can think of that firsthand. Like this week, I have been meaning so much to get back into like yoga and stretching classes because it helps recovery and a bit of switching off. So on a busy client check-in day, I train in the morning, and then I've started putting that yoga session appointment in the evening. And it's like, you only got 5 hours to get this done between what you do in the morning and then the evening. And you work so much more efficiently. You're way more switched on. So it's Parkinson's law, isn't it? When you have, you know, all the time to always work versus actually saying like, this is my downtime. This is my training time. This is my meal timings. Now I got to be productive in between that.
Yeah. The struggle with business owners is they don't have deadlines. No one's setting deadlines from them because they're at the top of the tree, right? So setting their own deadlines, they can then let themselves off the hook as well. So again, that's the common thing that we see is like, we always tell our clients to get their calendars out and make sure that this is all implemented. But a lot of people will color code the calendars and they'll make it amazing, and then they just won't look at it again. You know, they won't have the reminders on. So it's very important to actually put this into practice rather than just have it as a nice thing in the corner to say you're doing it. Messy
action, right?
Yes.
As opposed to it being perfect.
100%.
This is something which has actually been a topic of conversation. It's the thing that I used, or the topic that I used to educate the Team CBM coaches on this week, is how can we take action faster? Because there's certain individuals that will try to wait till everything's perfect, they've got the perfect resources, etc., to take action. For instance, if I'm telling a client who's stressed that they need to journal before bed and write down their thoughts, what's bothering them, so that they sleep better, like, hey, how's the journaling been going? 2 days later, and they're like, oh, I still haven't found the right journal.
Yeah, haven't got a pen.
Use the back of an envelope, right? So again, is that something that you find with entrepreneurs can be a sticking point, is aiming for perfection all the time?
Definitely. Yeah, 100%. And the people that do really well are the people that just take messy action. They're not afraid to fail forwards, look at that as an opportunity to learn rather than an opportunity to moan about it, like quite simply. So yeah, definitely.
So with that being said, your risk-taking, your optimism, that ties into what you're doing at the moment with your fitness journey, and your goals scare me. So I don't know how you...
They scare me as well. Yeah, big time.
I don't know how you feel about them. I was going to say, they are scary goals. Yeah. And it's interesting to know, obviously, with you giving yourself permission to rest and have that downtime, obviously with business, you'll have to do the same with fitness. But when you've got such huge goals in both those arenas, it's really just profound that you've been able to come to this point where you say you're still achieving that balance. So for the listeners, let them know what your goals are within whatever you're happy to share at this point in time.
Yeah, cool. Before I do that, I'd like to explain a bit of background as well, because I don't want to come across like I'm a superhuman. I'm a very, very, very normal guy. My fitness levels aren't the best in the world. I've been fat, I've been overweight. All my life with training, I've just been like lifting weights and doing hypertrophy work and strength work. And then I've got into running, and this is where the new goals come in. And I've got into being a bit more of a hybrid athlete, shall we say. So the next goal, the big goal of 2024, first and foremost, got a triathlon in January, but that's kind of just like a warm-up. So that's Olympic level.
Just a warm-up triathlon.
Yeah, kind of a warm-up. And the reason I'm doing a triathlon instead of another run, because it doesn't really make sense to train for a triathlon when the ultimate goal is a run, is because I've injured my foot. So it's like, how can I keep my fitness levels up? And then June 2024, I'm doing Dolomites Extreme, which is 72 kilometers of running, 18,000 foot up a mountain. 18,000 foot of elevation. I'm kind of giggling, listen to myself say it, because it feels absolutely outrageous that I'll do this. We went to watch the finish line of an ultra marathon when we were staying in Bulgaria, and the guys are like literally half my size, like they're just tiny, right? Their biceps are like the size of my wrists, like genuinely. And it's like, all right, I'm going to be one of these guys that's crossing this finish line and wonder what I'll look like after this. But the way I like to see it is it's just forced evolution, and a big believer in that, in terms of like, you've got to set a goal that scares you. So, and you have to become that person when you do it, when you're achieving it. And I'm not that person now. If I went to the Dolomites now and I tried to run 72 kilometers, I'm pretty sure I'd get stuck at the top, right? I wouldn't be able to make it back down. But over time, because I've got that goal, every day that I work towards it, I become more like that person. So yeah, they scare me as well. Don't worry.
I absolutely love it. This is something that definitely through the past few years of my life, I've started to do as well, whether it's investing a lot of money or whether it's taking a big risk, or setting a ridiculous goal. But doing that, as you say, for forced evolution, because you start to act like the person who has achieved that goal which you're aiming for at the end point. Yep. So let's say if you've set a goal which is within a year's time, if you know that you're working towards that, you've got to start behaving like that person now. And that's, as you say, leads into that forced evolution, makes you transform way faster than you would have done otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. You have to become that person today to be the person tomorrow or next week, right? Like if you want to be that person in 8 weeks, you have to just start acting like them today. And it's an easy bit of advice that you can give is, right, look at someone that's achieved what you want to achieve. So say there's 72K in the Dolomites. If I can look at someone and I can go, right, this is what they did to get there. If I just start acting like that today, it gives me a good opportunity to become that person in however many months, right? So goes the same fat loss. If you're someone that wants to achieve a load of fat loss, have a look at the people that are actually successful with it and then do what they're doing today. Obviously there's more to it, but it's quite a simple frame to put things in. If the person that's you want to be is getting up at 6 a.m, if they're journaling, if they're training 3 times a week and you're eating McDonald's three times a day, you're getting up at 10 a.m, you're not doing any mindset work, it'll probably give you some clues as to who you need to become to get there. So
why are those your goals then? Because you said, for some context, you're not a superhuman, you've never been like a endurance athlete, but you've set these goals. Why specifically these goals? To do the Dolomites, to do the Ironman?
Yeah, well...
Sorry, triathlon.
Yeah, an Ironman is on the cards. That'll be the year after.
I'm just thinking 25. Of all my friends at the moment who are in the hybrid athlete phase. There's literally Ironmans, there's ultra marathons, there's everything. Yeah. And I'm just like, maybe I should book one of these bad boys in.
Sorry, what was the question? Was it
so why specifically those goals?
Yeah, that's a really good question. God, I'm questioning myself now. Why those goals? I think the biggest reason I wanted to do it was to prove to our clients that I'm still about what I say I'm about, right? And I still do what I say, and I'm not just someone that like barks orders without being it. So I want to be a savage. I want people to look at me and be like, Jesus Christ, how are you achieving that, right? And I think that's the biggest reason why. And the other one, the more boring one, is that I just got bored of my training. I was just like going through the same stuff every day for 5 years pretty much, and I just fell out of love with my training, and I needed something new to make me grow as a person. And when I say grow as a person, I mean mentally more than anything, to continue challenging myself and pushing boundaries. I also want to see what I'm capable of, because we're sitting here right now, I don't know if I am capable of that run, right? But I want to continue to push and see what I am capable of. So I'm sure after the 72 there'll be something bigger. There might be a 100K somewhere, or there might be some bike ride or swim or whatever it is. But like I said, Ironman. But I want to see what I can actually do. It's something that David Goggins says. Like he runs past the graveyard and thinks, did those people know what they were capable of when they died? And I'd hate to be there on my deathbed and just be thinking, fuck, I wish I could have done more, right? I wish that would have been my biggest regret.
So how much do you actually care about whether you're successful in these goals or not?
Success is, it depends how you define success. Okay, so success to me is giving my all to the process. And if I give my all to the process and I come out the other side and say I make it to kilometer 69, because that's a good number, and I fail and I break my leg. And
he hasn't had a drink yet, by the way.
Just a coffee. So say I get to that kilometer and I don't make the finish line, right? But I know I've given blood, sweat and tears. I haven't missed a step in the process. Then that is still successful to me, right? So it's the same. I did a marathon last month. I was an hour over the time that I wanted to get, but that's because I injured my foot pretty damn badly on kilometer 23, but still gave my all. I still made sure that I finished the race. And I knew on the day, couldn't have done anymore. So to me, that was still success. So don't care about the medals. Never going to win a medal I'll get a participant medal, but I'm never going to be on the podium. I just care about giving it my all, and turning up as the best version of myself on the day.
I love it. That's exactly how I define success for myself as well. Previously, it would have been, what do other people think about me and how I've done? Did you ever think about that, or has it always been intrinsically driven?
No, I've definitely been through that period. When I was 20 years old, I drove a Jaguar for that reason. It's like, how can people look at me and think I'm successful, right? And in reality, it wasn't like very successful, and pretty good money for my age, but I got a car loan and I was in debt. So I've definitely been through that period. I think for fitness, I haven't. I think that's always been intrinsic. I don't think I've ever really worried about what other people thought in that sense. It's just it drove from pain originally, as we already discussed, and now it drives from a point of actually just pushing on forwards intrinsically. But I think in general in life, there's definitely been moments in my life where it's like, look at me and who I am, and that drives from insecurity, right?
Of course. I think a lot of the reasons why we start certain journeys are from insecurity. I, hands down, started my fitness journey from the fact that I felt incredibly insecure, but then also triggered by health reasons that I wanted to begin. The transition between it not becoming you driving yourself from insecurity to being something that's bigger, like a sense of purpose. Did you have a moment where, let's say, when it came to your business development, where you noticed that there was that switch? Was it when it was you due to go back into the office, or was there another point where you thought, why am I trying to portray this image of like having money, power, success, status? Did that at any point become unfulfilling, and then you're like, no, I need to do something that actually means more to me?
That's a really good question. That's a really, really good question. I think a big part of it was my fiance, Ali, who's sitting in the room when we got together. I didn't need to portray that person anymore, right? Because I kind of felt very fulfilled and had that person in my life.
Look at her, she's smiling over there. She's like she's got a Cheshire Cat's grin on her face.
So I didn't need to portray a person outwards that I wasn't trying to attract that attention that I was obviously craving in that time. So I think that's a big part of it. I don't think being furloughed gave me the opportunity to kind of review things, because as everyone will know listening to this worldwide, you're sitting in your room doing pretty much nothing for however many months on end. So it gave me a lot of time to actually reflect, and I focused a lot on personal development during that time rather than complete shit, like a lot of Call of Duty as well. But so yeah, I think those two things are probably what the tipping point was.
Would you say that there was anything poignant when it came to specific people or specific books, any types of elements of personal development that you can note were really pivotal to you changing to having fulfillment of, what your sense of purpose is, as that being your bigger focus? Because I recorded recently a podcast with Evie, and we were chatting about how we read a book talking about how the obstacle is the way, pushing through the hard times in life to actually do something that's more fulfilling, as opposed to having the victim mentality. So that was really poignant, and I'm interested to know for you, is there anything that you remember, whether it's a book or a specific person, that helped you?
Yeah, so I'm quite a practical guy. I don't read too many books, but when I do, they're relatively practical. So the two that I really remember reading at the start of that journey was 4 Hour Work Week, and that sort of opened my eyes to what was possible with building my own business. Don't bloody work 4 hours, but
never quite cracked the 4 hour work week yet.
Still just work week. And the second one was Atomic Habits, and I love Atomic Habits. I've read that book probably 5 times. And actually a third book is probably one, because those are two like very personal development sense books. The third one is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Very, very good book, and that probably changed my life. But the biggest thing I'll say here is there's plenty of people that read books and don't do anything with it, right? And that's not personal development. Just reading is not personal development. True personal development is acting on things and putting things into action. Whether you got it from a book or not, it's looking after yourself, focusing on yourself first, and making sure you're becoming a better person. I think too many people fall into the trap of just reading or listening and not doing. So I think the biggest thing that I did was doing. I did the legwork to get to that point as well, whether I got some ideas and stuff from a book or not. The best personal development is just working on yourself, mentally and physically.
it's showing up with messy action
Yeah.
and not just mentally masturbating over what you've read and like, oh yeah, I'll implement this at some point, which I'm 100% guilty of. I think it gets to the stage where the pain point has to be big enough to change. And that's something where if the pain point isn't big enough, people aren't going to change. Now, with regard to when it comes to entrepreneurs, what is their biggest pain point? That's something that I'm interested to know that you found from your client base.
Yeah, it depends person to person, definitely. Definitely person to person, but entrepreneurs typically are very connected to their business, right? So if they feel like they can be better in their business, but because they're focusing on themselves, then that is enough of a pain point to be able to push them forwards. Second one is family. If they feel like they're not providing for their family and they're not being the best person for their family, that's another huge pain point. So if, for example, we had a guy that came to us and he couldn't really play with his kids because he's too overweight and he's getting out of breath, like that's very hard to stay in that position and not do anything about it, right? Like that's got to a point where life's giving him a kick up the arse and he needs to change. So yeah, I think it very much varies from person to person still. Like entrepreneurs are still just humans, right? And we have normal behaviors and normal things going on in our lives that cause pain or cause pleasure. And yeah.
It's interesting because I'll speak from my perspective at Team CBM. A lot of the ladies that we work with are quite insecure when it comes to, you know, their physique, how they feel judged by the world. And so there is a lot of work, perhaps on the other end of what you've said, you focus on, you know, those people who want to be better, that extra 1% to get their health to a good point, to make sure that their business can get better. Whereas for us, it's really like encouraging people to believe in themselves, which I suppose as an entrepreneur, you don't really have much of a choice. You've got to get over that imposter syndrome.
You'd be surprised.
But as you say, there's a lot of people that struggle with it. So I'm curious to know if you've struggled with imposter syndrome because, you know, you say, I've always been an optimist, I've always taken risks, but did you ever feel like you weren't meant to be doing what you were doing?
My opinion, if you don't feel like an imposter, you're in the wrong space and you're in the wrong room. You should feel like an imposter quite a lot of your time because that means you're very uncomfortable and you're doing new things. So yeah, I still feel like an imposter.
Be the most stupid person in the room and then you are in the right room,
There
right?
we go. Yeah, exactly that.
Always aiming to learn more. Now, I think with that element of imposter syndrome, it can be a bit suffocating sometimes though. Do you feel like there's a fine balance of actually giving people, I suppose we can go back to Alex Hormozy's famous quote of you've got to produce that, you know, undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are. And that kind of like teeters on the seesaw with imposter syndrome, as you say. You should still feel like you're pushing yourself to the point of where you're uncomfortable, but then you've also got evidence of growth. So how do you balance that when it comes to your own journey and making sure that you don't slip too far into the mindset of like, I shouldn't be here, I'm an imposter?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I really love that quote from Alex Hormozy, by the way, because I think that relates very much back to myself and it relates back to the journey that I was speaking about earlier where I wasn't who I said I was when I got overweight. Like that's just wasn't in my DNA. So how do I balance it? I think finding that right, if we're talking about the room and the people that you're surrounded with, being around those people in short bursts of time is absolutely incredible. Like you don't have to be around someone for 24 hours, right? That's making you feel like shit about yourself. But getting around someone maybe once a week or twice a week and speaking to people that are elevating you to new levels, that's where I feel like an imposter. So I'll always make sure to have things in my diary or chats with people in my diary that do make me feel like a bit of an imposter and like, how am I here? And then the second part of that is like, I'm very, very good at what I do. And I know I'm very good at what I do, and we have the proof of that. You know, we've got X amount of transformations. I don't know how many, but hundreds. We've changed hundreds of lives over the past year. Like that is enough proof to me that we are very, very good at what we do. And then when I'm pushing to new levels, I guess that's where the key is. That's when I'm going to feel like an imposter, right? So, you know, if I just stayed where I was and I decided, right, happy, that's sort of life achieved and done, wouldn't feel like an imposter. But then go to the next level in life, whether that's, you know, an income bracket or a lifestyle, whatever it might be. That's when you need to feel very uncomfortable with the people you surround yourself with, and you need to feel like a bit of an imposter.
Yeah, and it ties back to that forced evolution of if you put yourself consistently in a room of people that are doing way better and you want to be at that table and have the same conversation, you've got to do the work to be able to join in and to be able to have that same conversation. You know, we've been on business mentorships together, and I remember joining those rooms and being like, what the fuck are they talking about? You know? And now we're at the other end where it's like, okay, cool, completed that one. You know, what's next? Yeah. So it is that forced evolution. And I think that's a nice way to look at it. But I initially at the start didn't feel inspired. I felt envious. I felt jealous. I felt, again, like I didn't really belong there. How do you balance those feelings of inspiration versus perhaps envy and jealousy, or do they come into play for you at any point?
Yeah, I've definitely felt envy, but it's very much like a passing thought, and I don't know if I have any useful techniques for that one. But I've definitely felt that emotion of envy when I see someone doing a lot better. It's like, why can't I be doing that? You know. So I think maybe just bringing it back to reality of going, okay, this is what this person did to get there. This is where they were here. This is where they are now. What was the bit in between? What was the action that they took? How have they gone from there to there? And I think that brings in more of the logical brain rather than the emotional brain, because if you're thinking envy and jealousy, you're not going to be able to be logical. Whereas if you can actually just strip it back to action, that's probably going to be a lot more useful, because you've then got a step-by-step process, so to speak, of do this, do this, do this, and you're ultimately going to work your way there. But yeah, it's definitely something I've experienced, but I'm not sure if I have a hugely profound way of dealing with it or balancing it.
I think that's the answer, though. It's something that my life coach always says to me, and it's ingrained in my head now. But he says when emotion is the poison, logic is the antidote. Yeah. So where the feelings of jealousy and envy are causing negative impacts or they're causing harm, then applying logic. And you've literally just said that. You will strip it back to like, okay, well, why do I feel like this? Oh, well, I probably just need to do the work, right? And so it's bringing it back to how can I actually take action and ownership for this? And obviously that's something that you do really well because you never had that victim mentality. Yeah. And so I'm interested to hear, when that translates over to the way that you're coaching your clients, is there something where you're specifically striving to put in, you know, milestones for them, whether it comes to both business and their fitness goals, or how do you tie in that blend? Because, you know, you're working with a specific type of person that I suppose wants to be improving in all these areas of their life.
Yeah, so we definitely do milestones, again, on a case-by-case basis, but we coach a lot of different people. So it's not like we just have entrepreneurs that are 20 kilograms overweight and they have to lose 20 kilograms and then we can do that exact milestone, right? So everyone will have their milestones of when we say we have 3 different phases. So when we say that evolution phase is done, that's kind of a celebration, calibration phase, celebration, optimization, celebration, right? So there could be milestones like photo shoots. We do a lot of them. So we typically do like 3 or 4 a year. Marathons, we've got clients. So we had a client in August that did 3 ultra marathons, for example. So these things are huge milestones for that individual, right? But it's not necessarily like a huge process that we have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's tying into where you said those goals are set as not only celebrations, but also leading by example. As you say, you're setting your goals to lead by example, to show people that you're still in the trenches, you're doing the hard work. And I suppose that's mirrored in your process, where you want your clients doing the same thing so that they can inspire the people that they work with, the people that they're guiding, that they can always be better. And that will, I think the beauty of what you do is that it trickles down not only to their family, but within their businesses. And that health and well-being within the businesses of those entrepreneurs is also an absolute priority, because if the leader is doing it, then everyone else will be, right?
Definitely. We have however many testimonials, and I keep meaning to post this on social media, by the way, because it's absolute gold, but I haven't done it. Have however many testimonials, and a question that we ask them is like, what's it worth to work with us? And every single time it's either priceless, £1 million, £10 million, like a huge amount of money. And a lot of them then go on to say, this process has actually made me £1 million, or it's made me 6 figures because I'm a way better person. Wouldn't have closed this deal, wouldn't have been able to achieve that, wouldn't have had self-confidence to do that. And that's the best feeling in the world. Like, that's fucking life-changing, like really life-changing. It's more than just having abs and looking good for a photo shoot. It is the impact that can have, and being the best version of yourself, and therefore for your business, therefore for your income, therefore for your family and kids. That can change your family tree. And I think bringing it back to that sometimes when I'm maybe like lose touch of why I do what I do is a very powerful tool to use.
Absolutely. And it's just been impressive to see over the past few years that we've known each other, how much things have developed for you. Like, kudos to you, Archie. You freaking crushed it. So I want to know, like, what's your vision for the next few years, both for the Optimized Entrepreneur, both for yourself? Like, where are you headed?
Cool. So we have a very bold vision, bold statement, and that is to be the best coaching brand in the world for entrepreneurs. Simple.
I love it.
Biggest and best. Nothing more complicated than that. And that idea of just being the best is taken from a book called No Bullshit Leadership, which, you know, I think you lent me that book actually.
Did you? Gave you that book?
Yeah, so a really good book. There we go.
There we go. I've helped you plan out your next 5 years.
Yeah, thank you. So just being the biggest and the best, and really having a very well-known brand that is known for having a huge impact on people's lives and has a very, very good reputation. That's important to me. And leaving a positive legacy behind for years to come. Yeah,
I absolutely love it. And what about for yourself personally? The same ethos, becoming the best ultra marathoner ever, or just the most well-rounded entrepreneur and fitness professional?
Well-rounded is definitely the way I want to go. I want to be able to be very, very, very good at different things. I don't want to be the boring person that just runs or just works. You know, I want to have a good, enjoyable life outside of that as well. So yeah, definitely the well-rounded option for me, but always going to be pushing the boundaries and seeing what's possible, and ultimately just creating a life that I want to live and that I'll die happy whenever I die. Like, if someone took me tomorrow, if I die and I get hit by a bus, I'm happy. And
let's freaking hope not. If you're in Dubai, it's more likely to be a Ferrari anyway, so
or
you're fine. or a white Lexus. Yeah. Archie, where can people find you?
Yeah, Instagram's probably the best place, which is archie.optimized, spelt the English way with an S, for any Americans listening. Instagram's the best place, and then Facebook, Archie Gravenor.
Thank you so much for your time. I massively appreciate it. So many gold nuggets in this episode, and just once again, thank you for sharing everything.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
No worries.